Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today we welcome back for the third time to Fintech Focus TV, but also the first time it's been with me hosting this one, to Adam Thomas from OpenFin. Adam, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Toby. Thanks for letting me join the program again.
Great to have you back. It's also great to have you back in the list of the most influential financial technology companies of 2020 as listed by the Financial Technologist magazine. And the business, from everything I've been seeing, reading, looking at, has been incredibly successful and exciting over a really difficult period. And I'd love to go into all of that very soon. But before we do that and hear about some of the innovations you've been doing and the sort of progress of the company and everything in between, can you give us a little bit of background for those of you who missed the first two shows to talk a little bit about your background in OpenFin, please?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so my background is 20 years in capital markets banking. I started off at Barclays Global Investors before on the buy side before moving across to banking, where I was really kind of in the equities division, but always kind of associated with kind of newer areas, kind of products that were kind of pushing certain boundaries. And my last role before joining OpenFin was the CEO of Fintech Europe. So very familiar with the capital markets workspace, and joined OpenFin really because the founders, Marcy Dar and Chuck Dorr, had a real vision for transforming how people work in capital markets on their desktop. And that vision really doesn't apply just to capital markets, but to every productive desktop that's out there in many different industries. OpenFin has historically been known as the OS of finance, essentially providing a foundational pillar to transform individual application experiences, but also whole desktop experiences. Why are we doing that? Well, we know that users across markets generally interact with about 36 applications a day. They're switching about 1,100 times a day between those applications. So changing how individuals consume individual applications and consume that whole desktop experience, that collection of apps, is a really important thing that we've been focused on now for over 10 years.
I think that's fascinating, and those numbers are incredible, aren't they? When I read that earlier on, it is extraordinary to think that, but it's not surprising because this is, as technology's evolved, it allows you to be so busy in your work that actually the interesting word I think you picked out there early on was productivity. And if we look at efficiency and productivity as two of the main words that's driven the last year or so and been so critical to the last year or so, I think those technology companies have been able to sort of solve the riddle for that, are commonplace in that list of the most influential companies that we're looking at. And it's I've been really, really interested to sort of geek out and study the sort of common traits of those sort of businesses within it. And when you look at companies like yours who are genuinely looking at relevant problems at the moment, they seem to be the ones that have really thrived over the last year. And it has been a sort of pretty unprecedented time. And we've looked at 2019, 2020 as being sort of fairly turbulent with anything from Brexit to the pandemic that's thrown into it. And people have dealt with that in loads of different ways. Companies have gone on the offensive. Some companies have gone on the defensive. We've seen all sorts of different ways of dealing with it, and a whole host of problems in loads of different ways and challenges for different companies in different formats. Tell us a little bit about how you guys have surfed the tide of 2020, because it sounds like, as I say, from everything I've heard, read, seen, spoken to my team about, that it hasn't been a bad run for you.
Yes, it's really interesting. I think if you look back at the challenges of 2020, people were dealing with those kind of very distributed kind of workforces. It meant that kind of how people communicate became more fractured. Collaboration was slightly more challenging, and therefore you really did see a number of firms making significant investments in what I would say is kind of improving employee experience, or EX. And EX is perhaps a new term for a lot of the people listening to on this particular broadcast, but actually think about employee experience is at the heart of what many firms do. Certainly within HR departments, that's critical and core to what they do. But it's become incredibly mainstream. We went from an office environment where it was very controlled and very well supported to kind of unstructured, kind of working from home. And firms really invested very aggressively in employee experience, to make that work from home experience as seamless as possible. So there was a significant investment in technologies like OpenFin that really help drive desktop experience for users. We also saw companies investing in things like soft turret, and telephony systems and so on, getting away from hardware that used to be sitting on their desk. We obviously saw, companies like Symphony as well, seeing massive growth in kind of chat platforms and so on. So anything in and around collaboration, anything around empowering employees, improving productivity, seem to continue to see strong uptake through 2020. And I think it's really important to say that many clients and organizations have been on this journey for some time. This wasn't particularly new. Lots of people have transformation agendas. Lots of people want to continue to improve productivity. But it's also true that in 2020, people accelerated those plans and made those investments far more quickly than they historically have done. And OpenFin, along with many other companies, were definitely beneficiaries of that.
I think that's sort of, you're absolutely right. That's sort of the fact of many of these technologies having sort of gathered momentum before this has been a common theme. And actually what this has allowed to happen is, we'll talk about different sort of years numbers, but anything from 5 to 10 years worth of innovation happening in a very, very quick period of time to really speed up things that actually, and if we look at the positives of this, going to make it a far more efficient, far more productive industry in financial services and capital markets than it was beforehand. Because capital markets traditionally, in my mind, has been a laggard in its adoption of technologies that are really going to help, and the ability to bespoke. You used the word earlier on, which is one of the most common words that we've had over the last year in this on the show, has been collaboration. Be that interoperability or whichever area you're talking about. This has been about bespoke solutions and a digital generation who are looking at things that make their life easier. And I think one of the things that's very clear with OpenFin and businesses such as yours is that real focus on making sure that user experience is that much stronger for people as well, which I think is really a real key factor.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you think about it in our consumer life, we've got lots of great experiences, very accelerated experiences. Particularly when you think about mobile phones, which is always the analogy we give. Just think about that adoption of mobiles, the smartphone, the power that's contained within that single device, and all the things it's delivered to users, as well as like very hyper-personalized experiences we get in consumer life when we're shopping and whatever it may be. How can we bring those kind of consumer-grade experiences into enterprise technology has really been the question, and something we've been focused on, and why we talk so much now about employee experience and productivity. And and sitting alongside that, you need to think about, for your particular firm, what does that mean and what can you transform? You mentioned older technologies, for example. Well, older technologies play a crucial role today. It can take real time for companies to upgrade older technologies to new. Everybody wants to get there, but it's a journey, and it's a phasing. It's about priorities and so on. In a similar vein to what we said about accelerating that transformation. We saw very similar in application real estate last year, with older technologies moving to web technology at a faster pace than they had prior.
That experience that you're talking about, that sort of employee experience, is something I'm fascinated with, and it sort of also tracks through to some of the challenges that companies are seeing. That you guys have been going through a period of company growth, both in terms of the wins that you've had and the people you've brought on and customer wise, which I think has been unprecedented, but then also teams expanding, which are challenges in themselves as well, right? So as you're a global business and looking to expand that reach and that remit, there are challenges there of having I love the analogies of people suddenly starting now to meet people who they've hired during the pandemic, who they've never actually met before, and suddenly realize they're 6'6" and twice the size of them. It's a really interesting sort of a piece to look at. So tell me a little bit about what that's looked like for you. How's that challenge been?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you think about OpenFin's business over the last couple of years, we've always said that we're not solving an individual technology problem, we're solving an industry problem. I think most people across the street view OpenFin as almost like a market utility. And that's how we're being backed by the industry and adopted, and the reason why we've attracted investments from strategics. We have 5 global banks that are investors in OpenFin. We have we have the largest global exchange in the world who's an investor in OpenFin. It's really seen as an industry solution. We've laid these foundations over the years of getting thousands of applications on OpenFin. It's grown tremendously. The number of applications on OpenFin has more than tripled in the last 3 months. Up to now around 3,500. On a similar level, the number of firms who have OpenFin inside their company has increased to over 2,400, and our users 300,000. So we've got these really solid underpinnings and foundations to the OpenFin business that is saying that the industry is with us, is backing with us. They're choosing us to build and deploy their applications. They're choosing us to build their internal desktop strategies, and we're incredibly grateful for the trust that everybody's placing in us as a business. And when people place that trust in you, it's you need to continue to deliver, and that is not lost on us. It's an incredible focus for us, which is why last year we made such a material investment in new product management teams, also new design teams, to go on the next stage of OpenFin's journey and deliver our new product, Workspace. And as you rightly say, Toby, many employees, in fact, I think over 30 employees that I'm yet to meet in person because of lockdown, and those new staff members are in both London, New York, and other locations as well.
It's an incredible challenge, that, isn't it, as well, for a leader? So it's it's significant growth of the size of the business, and I think if you'd been told that a year, 14 months ago, whenever it was, that you'd have 30 people working for your business who you'd never met before, it would probably be one of those sort of moments where you raise your eyebrows and think, right, how's that even going to happen? But dexterity and ability to look at this sort of issue and actually make it work, and there's been testament to the technology that we've got available at the moment, but also to the sort of ability for companies there to think about that and stick to the plan. And I think what you're talking there is saying that you knew what you wanted to do as a business and where you wanted to go. You had a plan which you believed in, and that allowed you then to make the right calls about what, how, and where you wanted to go. And I think that's a great thing to see. And because look, this is challenge businesses in all sorts of different ways. We've spoken a little bit about some of those challenges that have approached both the business and then also your customers at the same sort of stage. And as you just mentioned and alluded to, there has been some innovation that's come out of that, predominantly with you looking at the issue, saying what are some of the key things here that are challenging our customers, and let's provide a solution. And that's where Workspace comes in, right? And you've had some big announcements and launches on that in the last week or so. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into why that happened, the challenges that people were facing, and why and how this helps?
Yes, so I think over time, OpenFin, as I said earlier, has really built these kind of foundational pillars, kind of being backed by the industry. One of the things that does with such a large number of clients and working with top 23 out of 25 banks, biggest asset managers, and so on, and really important vendors in our network and ecosystem, is that you're at the centre of a huge amount of feedback, right? You can truly understand the challenges they're facing, the problems they're trying to solve for, and the opportunity they believe that exists. And if you can put yourself at the heart of that and act as a true collaborator to bring people together, operate very close partnerships with your clients, and extend that to things like design partnerships. So, when you think about product development, doing that in a much more dynamic way, very structured sessions of engagement. With that type of feedback, it's really clear to us what people wanted, and that is they wanted visible components from OpenFin. OpenFin has always been a kind of an OS layer, an API layer on the desktop. And for the first time, we were seeing incredibly strong demand for OpenFin to develop some UI components. So if you think we've been the kind of central backbone, kind of behind the scenes of many applications on people's desktops, but people didn't know they were running on OpenFin. Now you can see, every user can see 3 visible components that represent OpenFin Workspace, and that is the home kind of modal, which is effectively a digital assistant where you can find, search for information, applications, create, share, store workspaces. our central notification system that takes any alert or notification on your desktop or from kind of back-end engines, and all goes into one nice seamless central notification center with individual kind of personalization, and configurability for users on the desktop, all the way through to OpenFin's own browser, essentially, which is built on Google Chromium underneath, that is essentially designed for work. It's designed for productivity. It behaves in a very different way to a traditional browser that makes it powerful. But these products were developed in conjunction with OpenFin clients. And it was really amazing to us that people signed up for that product before, during the build phase, and before we'd actually delivered it. They partnered with us with the, on the alpha and beta releases to make it, strong and fit into the problem they were trying to solve as possible. So now what do we have at the end? We have Workspace, OpenFin Workspace. There's 3 components that everybody across the industry can build to, they can integrate to. And it's a very powerful sea change, both for application providers, vendors who provide content, developers, all the way through, of course, to the end user. We're changing and empowering the end user experience in a completely different way, and the reception has been fantastic.
That reception, I think, is great to hear, but it's also unsurprising because of exactly what you've just said. Those companies that have really listened to the pain points and then provided. I think you used actually one of the first times I've heard this, but it absolutely makes sense. Is that sort of collaboration of partnering with with the customers to provide the solutions and build the product together, I think is a really interesting aspect. And we've had this conversation quite a lot over the last couple of weeks, in particular, where that sort of thriving new product space of real engagement with customers to provide bespoke and tailored solutions to their actual problems is great. And increasing that productivity and seeing that sort of adoption. The adoption numbers that you've got are incredible, right? The amount of take up that's had on this so quickly, I think, is testament to what people are looking for, which is how can they improve their daily workflow. What sort of areas specifically of the workflow are you looking to to arrest, and where does it add the real advantage here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first of all, I think, one of the reasons why those numbers change so dramatically is we've always operated this kind of very open, collaborative model, where we're trying to empower the community to collaborate together, and OpenFin, to, by virtue of its name, be very open, right, in bringing people together. I said earlier, we're not solving a specific, not just a specific technology problem, we're solving a problem for an industry. And within that industry, it's not just for the front office, it's really for every single area. So while OpenFin is well known for having a very large amount of applications that run OpenFin in the front office and supercharging kind of front office experiences, we've seen huge growth in all kind of corporate services areas, through to middle office, back office, risk management, operations, compliance. We've seen HR teams who are obviously investing aggressively in employee experience. So it's incredibly broad because everybody suffers from this same problem. Everybody has lots of applications they're dealing with every day. There's a problem surfacing data insights and information. We need to help people to make decisions faster on the desktop and so on. So I don't think it's any surprise that we've seen OpenFin adoption kind of spread quite organically across other areas and divisions of financial institutions.
Yeah, and I think this employee experience thing is really interesting right now as well, isn't it? Because if you look at certain areas of data, you'll see that post-pandemic or certainly in the next couple of months that we're looking at in particular, the statistics are that 54% of people are going to be looking for a job at that sort of stage, which is phenomenal. And 1 in 2 of any company's business who are potentially looking at changing roles, once the market seems to come up, which has got some sense to it. The ability of companies to really think about their position as an employer of choice and to look at how they can improve their employee experience and actually make it a no-brainer to stay in that organization has to be at the top of the agenda. So when you look at their ability and people's ability to what, in my opinion, this is an underviewed piece as far as I can say, of what allows me to be as successful as I possibly can in my job? What makes this job as easy as possible? So if I go to somewhere else, I've suddenly taken off the Superman's cape, and it becomes more difficult for me to do the day job, which I do, and it advance my career. And it's products like that those you're talking about really allow that sort of thing to happen. And I think it's really fascinating actually to look at that employee experience element of technology, which I think is very, very underplayed. And in fact, in a year's worth of doing this 3 times a week, I think you're probably the first person who's actually spoken about that as a benefit to a customer buying a product, which I think is incredible, right?
Yeah, indeed. And, again, it goes to the heart of employee experience drives productivity, right? Yeah. And, so for firms, obviously, very interested in productivity, but they also want their employees to be happy. And I think, over the last 18 months, what have we seen? We've seen, just a huge focus on on thinking about the welfare of staff in a very different way. Of course, companies have always cared about their employees. There's no question about that. But it took on a completely different dimension when the workforce was at home. It was distributed. People were working in different environments. Some people in bigger rooms, some in small rooms, some in their bedroom. Some people with their family around them to support them. Others, isolated and alone in flat building, be it in one of the most glamorous locations like the centre of New York, and but not being able to get outside. So
exactly.
So to really, I think companies went to a completely different level in understanding their employees and what they were going through, and think about that engagement and how you checked in with your staff, how you understood their personal circumstances was really, really important. And then thinking about how you repair some of those challenges around collaboration. Also how people started to become, even more resourceful as well, right? So first of all, you weren't able to kind of just shout across the desk and ask somebody a question. You'd have to be, your typical response was to be more resourceful and try and look yourself. Actually, my daughter said this about homeschooling and being on Zoom, that in the classroom, you'd instantly ask the person next to you, or you'd put your hand up and talk to the teacher. On Zoom, she would look on the internet first and try and find something herself. And if she's really stuck, she would then go on to us. So there's these different dimensions of resourcefulness as well, which some people can see as being beneficial, but also they can be quite frictional from a productivity perspective. Yeah. So I think, companies who continue to kind of identify these problems, and particularly ones where collaboration was breaking down or becoming more challenged, you weren't part of that communication network of being in a room and passively, picking up the passive hearing and passive learning of what was going on around you. How did they change that? And, I mentioned earlier, things like chat platforms obviously saw tremendous growth. There's been, super impressive numbers coming out of companies like Symphony. And when we look at that back to our kind of like, being very open and very collaborative, we always think about, well, how can we work with those firms? They should, it should be part of the OpenFin ecosystem. How could we collaborate together? And companies like OpenFin and Symphony have a lot of mutual customers, and therefore us working together say, okay, well, how can we supercharge the experience for our mutual customers? How can we do that? How can we deliver something different to them to help them even more? So it's I think it's given rise to lots of new partnerships as well across companies, and obviously resulted in new tooling and so on for the desktop.
So there's a lot of interesting things that you've spoken about there, and it comes through to the sort of common themes of what I've been saying beforehand about high success, high performing businesses over this sort of phase, where we are talking about employee experience, where we are talking about productivity, where we are talking about efficiency, where we are talking about friction reduction, where we are talking about collaboration. These are all things which I think have been quite rightly very on trend in the financial technology space over the course of the last year or so. If we start to look ahead and say, look, we want to keep this momentum and the excitement that I think has been in it. I've said this a couple of times recently. This is my 21st year of recruiting into the financial technology space. And so you've seen various cycles of it. And I've never seen anything more exciting than actually the gains that have been made over the course of the last 12 months, which is incredible. And the demand at the moment for businesses to grow and to accelerate and to move into this space is off the chart and anything we've seen before. So it's an exciting time. Tell me, and I've got zero doubt that the excitement absolutely fits with what you're heading to with OpenFin and the sort of continued global expansion and opportunity that you guys are looking at right now, and continuing to listen to your customers to drive the business further forward. Tell me what's exciting, what's coming up, what can we tantalize our listeners with at the end of this great interview?
Sure. So I'd encourage everybody to look at the OpenFin Workspace kind of launch event that we hosted on Tuesday this week. Get the replay online. We can maybe attach a link to this video as well to truly understand the possibilities for your desktop. I think one of the things just generally about innovation is some people they say, I'd love that experience, and then they sit back and they say, it's going to take a lot of work to get there. It's going to take a lot of time. It's surprising. Deliver incremental improvements and experiences actually very rapidly, very quickly. It's about really starting on that journey. It's really about starting that journey. I think for us, those workspace components are really, really critical. We've already seen very rapid adoption of the OpenFin Notification Center. It's very, very clear that everybody is very overloaded with information, alerts, notifications within single applications, within email, within chat, and so on. So an ability for it to be centralized and help with rapid alerting, also rapid decision making has really struck a chord across the industry. So I'd expect to see more and more of the vendors continuing to use OpenFin Notification Center, as well as adoption by the buy side and bank clients. More broadly, what can people expect? Well, I think my note from at a more macro level is just the amount of projects that are underway to think about that employee experience. So as we said, we saw some great investments over the last 14 months or so. Some of those a little bit more tactical, some strategic. I think now with more equal footing and everybody seeing what the new working regime looks like, is really planning properly and very strategically for the future. So what other investments do they need to make? Be it that around real estate, physical office space, which obviously there's a huge amount of debate around what that physical presence will need to be on a go forward basis, all the way through to the tools on people's desktops. So a real range. But I think at every major organization we talk to, there is a strategic working group, a strategic objective and working group underway, or a series of projects underway to truly think about the future of work, or in OpenFin sense, think about the future of productivity, and where they need to invest and change as an organization. And I think going back to the office is going to be really, really interesting. I've been watching some great panels and great discussions recently on this topic. We also have data, of course, from our own employees around what they're planning for their return to the office. So most people are looking for a degree of flexibility when they return to the office. I think that's, could be one day, at least one day, or 2 days a week. And now that's going to vary a lot depending on the actual function that they perform within the firm. But also we've got to think about, how are we going to structure that return and what days in the office are people actually going to work, right? So, collaboration is going to be key, right? We've talked about it several times through today's interview. So, if I am going to go into the office, of course, I want to be there when other people are going to be there, other people that are relevant to my team that I need to collaborate with and I can have meetings with, and we can do that brainstorming and whiteboarding and everything else that goes with it, and build in-person relationships. Also what we said we've been missing a lot. So I think, companies have got to think about those what are the structures for that return to the office, for it to be successful, to us to get back what we've lost, and ensure that we take that collaboration to the next level while still remaining and delivering on that flexibility that I think employees are going to really be demanding more and more from their employers.
Absolutely agree. That future of work thing is a genuinely fascinating topic, and quite what that looks like is still anyone's guess. I was in town 2-3 days this week, and Thursday, I think, was the first. I've been doing it for on and off a while now for the last year or so. And Thursday was the first day where it really felt like there was a distinct move back to the city. There was a lot of whilst there's fewer shops open for lunch at the moment, you saw real queues forming outside various different places, and I think that appetite to move back, albeit in a hybrid manner, is certainly going to be there. But the hybrid is the important part of it, and with that comes the next phase of challenge of this whole thing, because there will be different parts of the challenge. There will be different things that we're looking at. There will be different ways of communication, everything you've just outlined beforehand. And that's going to be a really, really interesting thing to look at. Adam, this has been absolutely fascinating for me. Really, really interesting take on it. Very, very interesting to look at some of the different approaches you've taken to it. And what I've loved about it is just that absolute focus on the customer and saying, how can we improve it and make it that much easier, that Superman's cape for people to do their job and do it effectively within your customer base. And really, really excited to see what happens with Workspace, and very, very grateful for you sharing the time today. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks again for inviting us to join you today, Toby. And yeah, congrats on the continued successful broadcast as well.
Thank you very much. Can't wait to have you back on for episode 4 as well. It's going to be good. Thank you all for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have, and we will see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks so much.